Welcome into Campo and Joe. Good to be with you. If you're watching on Facebook Live, we totally appreciate it. If you're finding us on any of the 1010XL social channels, thanks as well. And wherever you listen to your podcast, Joe C. from XL Primetime, Dave Campo, former Dallas Cowboy head coach and our head coach on XL Primetime. And he and I are going to power through about 30 minutes of a Campo and Joe podcast, keeping you up to date with everything. We want to say a quick thanks to Beaver Chevrolet. They bring you Coach Campo, so let's wow you with some of his thoughts, my thoughts. But thanks again to Beaver Chevrolet. Find them on Phillips Highway and at beaverchevrolet.com. So, Coach, as we are coming on the air with our Facebook Live show, there's big news because the trade deadline is taking place this afternoon, and the Jaguars have just put together a deal to get Calvin Ridley from the Atlanta Falcons. And Calvin Ridley comes in as an accomplished wide receiver, but there's also a little baggage. So what's your immediate reaction? And then we'll go through some numbers with Calvin.
Well, the first thing I would say is that we're gambling with more money than he gambled with. That's the first way I would look at it.
Yeah, that's true. Contract-wise, yes.
Yeah,
yes.
You know, obviously he got suspended for betting $1,500 on a game. So, you know, again, the one thing about it, though, is he put together one great year, and that's 90 catches for 1,300 yards. So he's got some firepower.
143 targets that year. This was when Matt Ryan was quarterbacking the Falcons. 90 catches, as you said. The average was 15 yards per catch, which is big. 9 scores. So he got in the end zone quite a bit. Now, if I'm picturing Calvin Ridley right now, I'm picturing a little bit of a longer, taller, maybe as quick as Christian Kirk. That's kind of the guy that when I'm picturing Calvin Ridley, that's who I think they're getting.
Well, you know, when I watched him at Alabama, you know, he has speed. Now, you know, how much speed, I don't know. But to me, that's a good gamble because he has proven that he has done some things. You just got to slowly upgrade the roster. And that's just another weapon for our quarterback.
All right, so according to Ian Rappaport, who has put it out, conditions attached to the trade, if he gets reinstated by the certain date, it's worth a 2023 fifth-round pick. Otherwise, it's a sixth. So that really is not giving up much at all. If he makes the team in 2024, it's at least a fourth. So it could move up. So anyway, you're dealing with a mid-round pick. And I'll follow your joke, the gambling joke, with this joke that, wait a minute, we're making a trade at the trade deadline for next year? Does that mean that next year is already here, that we're giving up on this year? So let's kind of pick up that part of this because I know Jaguar fans are going to react to that going, hell yeah, Calvin Ridley, and they're going to go, wait a minute, he's gone until next season. What are we doing for this season?
Well, you know, I'm a big proponent, you know, don't ever think this particular season since it's Doug Peterson's first.
Right.
Don't think that it's about the next game. It's about 5 games down the road. It's about 9 games down the road. It's about next year. Because at this point in the season, even though, you know, obviously this game coming up is a big game. Right. Because you want to win. You don't want to just go in and say, okay, well, we're going to go 2 and 16 or whatever it is, 14, 15. I don't know. I'm not very good at math. You know, because we're waiting to next year. I don't think that's the case. But you're always looking forward to what's forward. And I think that's part of it.
And if you get him in the system, he's going to come in healthy, a year less wear and tear on his body. I certainly can come up with some positives as well. And I'm not disagreeing with you at all that he comes in with credentials. And he's a guy that immediately, whenever the offseason took place, he was suspended about 5 games into last year. And then they came up with the disclosure that he was sitting on the sidelines hurt and wasn't going to be available for a couple of games. So he says, you know what, I might as well just log on to DraftKings or FanDuel, whatever it was. I'm going to go ahead and play the numbers. He played $1,500. And here's the other thing that kind of ticks me off a little bit, Coach. He gets suspended for an entire year for gambling, let's just call it a small amount when it comes to NFL players. And you got guys that have done some serious stuff that are suspended for less time. Deshaun Watson comes to mind.
You know, the stuff that's not involved with gambling is an individual issue. Yeah. Whereas gambling, that's the last thing the NFL wants, any professional football team wants, that a game could possibly be fixed.
You're right.
That's the difference between the two. So, you know, when a guy like Watson gets suspended, it's the integrity of the individual, and sometimes it's professional football. Right. It's not amateur football. Yeah. You can overlook that, but when a guy is, when you got so much gambling involved, and gambling is more involved now than it's ever been, any situation where they think it might be fixed is really not going to happen. No, I totally get what you are saying and your logic, and that is why it happened. But it's just a little bit of a shame that you can see some of the pluses and minuses as to why you would do one thing versus the other. So you got Calvin Ridley next year. Let's go back to last Sunday and let's start looking ahead to this Sunday just a little bit. Jaguars are on a 5-game losing streak. And it is infuriating fans the way they are losing. They're coming up with different ways to lose. Now, let's just kind of set the table with the initial thought that we all had coming into the season. If you're a Jaguar fan watching or listening, you're going, back at the beginning of the year, please be competitive. Please compete. Give me a chance to be excited going into the fourth quarter. I would always joke with you, get me to where they cut off the beer sales. I want a good football game going into the fourth quarter. Well, they've done that. They've had seven fourth quarter leads, and they've lost 5 straight games. So you've gotten to a point where you're much better than you were a year ago, but you're still the same. Does that make sense? Yeah, it makes sense. The thing that's the most frustrating for me is the fact that, it's dumb plays that are killing us. It's not. The reason they're better this year is because it's not as physical as it is mental. And mental can be fixed. Physical can't. If you're not as good as the other guy, chances are that other guy's going to win in any battle, okay? But if you're as good and you're making mental errors, it's costing you the football game. And I'm talking about penalties. I'm talking about, guys busting a coverage, those kind of things. A guy jumping off sides, those are the things that are positive in a way because you can hopefully fix them. Negative from the standpoint that you really should have won probably a couple more of those ball games at least. Yeah, you could go penalties, players, and play calls, and you could come at any one of these 5 losses with a variety of reasons in any one of those piles as to how they got to the L side of the scoreboard. But let's zero in. Let's go offense first. Even though you're a defensive guy, Coach, let's go offense first, and let's go after the very obvious topic that everyone's talking about. What is wrong with Trevor Lawrence? And before we get to play calling, let's just drill down on him and what you think he's going through, because he's certainly struggling a little bit right now. Well, when you look at him, you see some really nice things. I mean, he's stepping up in the pocket. He's delivering the ball with a little bit of authority. The thing that bothers me a little bit is he seems to zero in on one receiver, and he's going to make that throw no matter what. I don't see him going from a first to second to a third read. Okay. When he does that, it takes him too long. And now all of a sudden, you got an issue with too much pressure. He makes some really good throws and then he misses some. But the concern that I have the most is that in critical situations, he's making some bad decisions. And that's a mental thing. And the thing I'm worried about is a little bit of the confidence. Is he mentally tough enough to be able to handle, situations like this where he's never had to handle them before? No, it's a fair question. And in high school, he was a superior player. He dominated the competition. We know that. In college, he had a 34-2 record. He was a dominant player on a dominant team with a lot of other dominant players at their position around him. We should not dismiss that. He wasn't the only good player. Now, fast forward to the league. The league will expose you in a heartbeat because they have got guys that are as good as you and playing at their top level at their position. So, is Trevor finding out just how dang hard it is when you don't have a bunch of 5 stars around you and you don't have, Wake Forest? Apologies to Wake Forest. When you don't have a Miami. Boy, you're working me over today. I couldn't help it. I had to go there. I'm in trouble with Coach for that one, but you get my point. Yes. I think PFF when they grade people.
Pro Football Focus.
They grade him pretty darn good between the 20s. When he gets inside the 20, he's struggling. And some of it is mental. Some of it is it's a different deal down there. So my feeling is that we've had the most drops. Even with this group, which I think is a better group than we had a year ago, we've had the most drops of anybody in the NFL. He had a great throw to number 11 on a throw that would have probably been about a 25 or 30-yard gain that he dropped.
Yeah, Marvin Jones.
Yeah, and so it's a little bit of a combination, not having everybody around you and the ability that you're playing against.
Yeah.
And I still don't see a tremendous amount of separation with the receivers in comparison to what I look at when other teams are throwing the ball. So you can make excuses. His biggest deal, in my opinion, is he doesn't see the field as well as I think he should, and that's something I think you can gain by experience.
Yeah. But you want him progression 1, 2, 3. You want it to happen fast. He drops back. He's either going to try and move a safety. He's going to have to he's going to have to declare, I'm looking here, I'm looking over there. And he's going to have to make those decisions much faster.
Yeah, and plus the fact that he does zero in on some receivers. Yeah. A perfect example of it, there were two perfect examples when I see it, is the one that he had the intentional grounding just before the half.
That
it
one
was
got
a
me.
Third down and I'm going to say 6 or 7.
Third and 9.
Third and 9.
At the 38.
Right. And he had Zay Jones in the flat. Might not have made the first down, but it would have put him in field goal range for sure.
Right.
And he waited and waited, trying to get the throw down the field. And he got Fortner let the guy go a little late, and he got chased, and he just threw the ball away. That's one. The other one.
That's the third intentional grounding call in crucial times that he's had.
Now that's making a mistake. Period. But I'm just talking about his ability to read or pick out whatever.
Right.
The other one that was really shows something to me is he made a throw to Hasty in the flat immediately against the cover 2. Well, the corner's sitting out there, and he racked up Hasty big time.
Yeah.
That, to me, shows that he had picked it out, that's where he was going to go with the football.
Okay. Yeah.
So, to me, those are things that he has to clean up for sure.
If he makes the decision too early before the defense kind of gives him other opportunities, you are right. I don't know how Doug Peterson's going to coach him out of that. And I asked you this question on XL Primetime. He has gone through a 5-turnover game. He's gone through a pair of games with 7 total turnovers, and then he cleaned things up. He threw for 90+%. He threw for 80+%. But then he comes out on Sunday against the Broncos, which is a good defense, but he completes 18 footballs for 133 yards. And that means, we all know what that means. It means you're just taking little small, you're limiting your success. You're not trying to go downfield unless when you do go downfield, you're getting burned for going downfield. That is a problem. That almost feels like he's hitting the panic button a little too soon.
Honestly, I don't see anybody that can go downfield except the tight end.
So that goes back to your
number
separation.
17, because if you're playing against zone, he can get himself into areas where you can make a big throw. We don't have a Hamler like the guy that ran by our guy.
Yeah.
We don't have one of those guys.
Yeah.
And so you're not seeing the big throws. And I've said it right along, Joe. The problem you have with, they put together a lot of long drives during this 4-game stretch. A lot of them.
Yeah.
The problem is, to be successful at that, you have to be perfect. Defenses pounce on bad plays, bad situations. And it's hard to put a drive together of 10 or 11 plays without you making a mistake. And all you have to do is have one false start or one holding penalty or something that puts you behind the chains or one tackle for loss or a throw in the flat that gets blown up or a bad screen. All of a sudden, you're behind the chains, and it's hard to come back from that. And that's the issue that we have right now. Most of the games are won, and most touchdowns are made where there's a big play in it. That's one of the keys.
Right.
Look at ours Sunday.
Yeah.
Etienne goes 49 yards with a sweep. We score on that drive.
Yeah.
That's what happens when you get the big plays in there.
And KJ Hamler had a 49-yard play for them against
That's
this
the only
defense.
way they could get back into
When
it.
they drove 98 yards, that was one play that took up half of the football field. All right, so personnel, play calling, penalties. And before we get to we'll focus on the defense a little bit more, but let's just do those three again, because this is the frustrating thing for both of us. And it's the mistakes. Like you said, if you have this long extended drive, chances are you could get a hold, you could get a false start, you could get the intentional grounding, any of those. And if we flip it on the defensive side, you've got the offsides, you've got the personal foul hitting the quarterback. So these are all penalties that I don't know that they could easily be corrected, but they should be corrected. So is it a situation of players taking things lightly, or is it coaches not putting a heavy-duty teaching moment on these mistakes? Where does this come from?
Well, I was in coaching for 46 years, and the one mantra we always had was, if there's a lot of penalties, it's a discipline issue, and that's your responsibility as a coach. You're responsible to make sure that doesn't happen. How you do it, everybody has a little different way of doing it, but that's a big part of it. The other thing that breeds those kind of mistakes is frustration. If you're struggling, you lose a few ball games in a row, somebody trying to make a play, he launches and hits the guy in the face with a pass, roughing the passer penalty. Those are the things that frustration brings about. And I think at this point, 2-6, 2-5, what it was prior to the game, there's some frustration amongst the team. And that's one thing you have to guard against as a football coach, is making sure your team is not pointing fingers, is paying attention to the little things, is not practicing the way he's supposed to practice, is laissez-faire about jumping off sides or false starts, those kind of things. And again, there's going to be some penalties like holding, pass interference. Those are physical issues sometimes, but you can't have the pre-snap penalties and win.
All right, let's get to the play call, okay? Because now we've done penalties, we might do a little personnel. Let's get to the play call. And this is where, Coach, we both get a little fired up, you in particular, because as a defensive guy, between the 20s, this football team is moving up and down the field with success. You get inside the red zone, things tighten up. It's driving a lot of Jaguar fans crazy that they are turning the football over in the red zone. They had 2 pass interference penalties. They had 1st and goal. They roll right, and Trevor throws it into a sea of Broncos, and it was easily picked off instead of choosing to run the football. That's a player and a play call problem.
Yeah, I think that's a combination. I think, Doug, when things work, it's great. When they don't work, it's your fault. Caller, But I was always under the assumption that if you can't run it inside the 20, you're not going to score a lot of points. And defensively, I felt pretty good. For the 20 to the 20, we were not while I was calling them, we were not what you would call an overly aggressive defensive football team.
Okay.
We were going to make plays based on our abilities, but inside the 20 didn't bother me at all, because I felt, number one, if we couldn't stop the run, we were in trouble. But if we forced them to throw the ball down there, we felt like we had an advantage. And so to me, you have a ball on the 1 or 2 yard line, you got to at least make 2 attempts to try to get the ball over the goal line running the football, in my opinion. You don't very seldom see balls thrown from inside the 10-yard line in the back of the end zone. They're either quick flat throws to somebody out of the backfield with a pick route or, those kind of plays.
Right.
If you're going to throw it. Very seldom. There's too much congestion in there. You're playing with. And there's too many people in there. And I think one of the problems Trevor has down there is sometimes I don't think he saw that linebacker in front of that receiver, because the receiver was open. If he'd have just laid it up there, he over the top of him, he tried to gun it in there. I don't think he ever thought that guy could make a play, or he didn't see him.
Yeah.
So to me, I would have not made, in that particular case, a rollout.
Yeah, and the thing that gets me more than anything else, I'm using the combination of the play call and the player himself, is that when you make that decision, I don't know if there was an option where you could have run, but I totally agree with you. Run the football from the 2-yard line in, make them prove that they can stop you. But not only are you compressing the field front to back because you only have 12 yards to work with, you're cutting the field in half when you start rolling, and that coverage rolls over. Everybody has an opportunity to make a play.
Here's my thought. When you roll out that close to the goal line, you either have a guy stopped right on the goal line where guys overrun the guy and you can dump it to him, or you throw the ball quick in the flat. If you don't have either one of those situations, you throw the ball out of bounds.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
You don't throw back into the middle. Now, do you see some guys do it and successful? Maybe Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, they're named
but Patrick Mahomes has had more turnovers inside the red zone than a lot of people have.
Yeah. I mean, he's also scored more inside the red zone.
That's exactly right. So, maybe some guys can do it, but the percentages are not with you unless you get rid of the ball. You go out there to make sure it's an easier throw for you to throw something in the flat. They would have had one to play the last time they did it, but they held number 17.
That's right.
They had that throw.
Yeah.
He would have been out over behind everybody, and the guy grabbed him.
Yeah.
So that was a pass interference penalty.
And
I don't think I would have tried it again. I think I would have run the football.
I agree. Because I like Doug Peterson as a play caller. I applaud aggressiveness. I applaud trying to go for it, get points, and a lot of those things. But when you add it all up, the losses is really the only thing that matters. But you look at the total number of turnovers, total number of touchdowns. They're basically trading touchdowns and turnovers right now and trading yardage. This team has 2,900 yards. The defense has given up close to 2,800 yards. So they're trading a lot of things.
One of the interesting things about, the play calling is the 4th and 1s. I'm old school. So, if I'm on offense, I'm being conservative. If I've got a chance to take the points, I'm going to take the points.
Right.
But from a defensive standpoint, there's nothing that scares me more than a team having 4 downs to get a first down.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's a catch-22. Now, I throw all the analytics out because when I look at it like the tenor of the game. What's going on in the game? Is the defense worn out to where I better make this first down and keep them off the field, or else they're going to get the ball and score with it?
Yeah.
Do I feel really good about the play I've got called? They've done it twice where they've hit home runs, one with Robinson and one with Hasty. So, it's a catch-22,
right.
But my personal feeling is I'm a conservative, more of a conservative guy in that situation.
Yeah, but I like where you're coming from there, is that the feel and flow of the game as opposed to looking at my analytics and figuring it out.
Yeah.
Because I totally agree. It's always the argument between let's tie and take them to overtime, or let's go for the win. If you've driven the length of the field and you've got a defense absolutely worn out and on their heels, I'm going for the win right then and there. It makes a hell of a lot of sense to me. All right, so let's get to the defensive side of this, and then we'll touch on a little bit about maybe what the Raiders might bring coming in on Sunday, because the Raiders are reeling a little bit too now. Let's think about what just happened to them against the New Orleans Saints. But defensively, far too, and we've already talked about the penalties, so we know that they've come up with ways to mess things up. But Josh Allen has not been able to get to the quarterback nearly as much as you'd like him to be successful at rushing the quarterback. The Denver Broncos had injuries along the line. Arden Key was able to be successful. Dwan Smoot has definitely been a guy that can get to the quarterback. Trayvon did get there as well. What's frustrating you the most about this defense?
Well, a couple things. One, they're not getting to the passer enough. And, especially these last 2 weeks where there have been offensive linemen banged up.
Two line groups with a lot of injuries.
Yeah, I would have liked for us to be able to get there a little bit more, and that has led to some frustration. One of the biggest plays in the game was Allen going underneath, and Wilson scrambling for a first down on 3rd and 5 on the final drive. We've got to. I'm watching other teams and I'm seeing games all over the place. I'm not seeing a lot of games from this front. They're trying to get there with the 4 guys with straight rushes. When they have run ET games and TE games, they've been somewhat successful. So to me, I don't think we're getting enough push with the inside guys, and we're just running around with the outside guys. Okay,
so now have we reached a point, we're close to the halfway point of the season, have we reached a point where the fact that Shaq Griffin is down with a back injury, Darius Williams, good but not great, Trey Herndon being forced into a starter's role, the linebackers not playing as well as you'd like them to play. They're getting beat a lot again in the passing game, particularly with the tight end and some of the running back routes that have been run. Are you saying that Mike Caldwell has to commit more guys to coverage, and that's why he's only able to rush 4 most of the time?
I've been disappointed a little bit in the fact that when they have blitz, they haven't gotten home. So
I agree.
I'm okay with just rushing the 4, but guys have to, they have to do their job up front.
Yeah.
The only other disappointment thing I have with the defense is, I'm a big change zone defenses. And he's a little bit like the guys we've had here. We're a man team and a 3-deep team. That's it. And, there's some weaknesses in there. You got to be able to run some. They opened up with cover 2, on 1st and 10, 2 drives in a row, no gain.
Yeah.
They have to be able to do some of that, but on one of the cover 2s, the corner didn't reroute the guy. So they don't practice it enough to really be able to do it, and that's a little bit of a concern.
And then coming out of the half, they immediately saw a weakness in linebacker coverage and the tight end, and they opened it up, a couple of huge receptions right down the field.
They had one where they had 5 guys up on the line, and one of the advantages of that is one of the outside linebackers can come and the other one drops. Well, in this particular case, it was one of those tight ends down the seam. They brought the left line outside linebacker. They dropped the right Allen, the right linebacker straight back. Number 33 was responsible to go to the hook area over where the seam route was run by the tight end. He went to where the drop linebacker was. He had 2 guys standing at each other, and there was nobody in the throwing lane for the seam route against cover 3. Those kind of things are happening a little bit now all of a sudden. And remember, you got a rookie there. And 23 hasn't been much better in the zone.
Foye Oluokun, a tackling machine up in Atlanta, but those were a lot of tackles for a lot of yards gained.
But I think I think they're both doing okay versus the run.
Yes.
It's the pass coverage where they're having the problems.
Yeah, it's the third down situations too, where they're moving the chains and keeping their drives alive. All right, so let's wrap it up with. Before we ask about the Raiders, give me a somehow silver lining that you have to, as a head coach, have to kind of play on and get these guys to stay committed to getting better. Because Doug Peterson stood at the podium, he goes, all we can do is keep doing what we're doing. And I'm paraphrasing, but that's what he said.
Well, unfortunately, when you're losing, the only thing we as media guys talk about is the negative. Travis Etienne. If we're not excited about Travis Etienne,
stud,
we're not looking at the same game.
Yeah.
That guy is a special cat. He's got to be a big factor. And I'm not talking about just running the football. I'm talking about running some plays out of the backfield where he's catching the ball. Not screens. They're a terrible screen team. I don't know what we're doing wrong there, but we're not getting the screens. One of them, they threw the ball out to Hasty, and both 75 and 79 came out there, and they didn't block the guy that had him man-to-man.
Come on.
You got to block somebody. But the biggest thing for me is he's got to be a focal point now of the offense. And you hope, obviously, that his durability is there and whatever. But that's a real positive to me.
It's
because
huge.
If you can get the running game going, I'm not quite sure we run enough play-action passes as opposed to just dropping back and throwing the football.
But remember, if you run and play action, unless you're coming out of the gun and just doing an inside handoff, he has got to turn his back Trevor does, turn his back.
Yeah, but I'm not talking about being under center. I'm talking about out of the gun,
inside.
where he's making a play faking.
Yeah, and look, if they were to run that, then Trevor's going to have to be more of a willing runner, and I'm all for that as well.
Absolutely.
I think that could happen, and I think it might free him up a little bit. You and I have talked about this a little bit on the radio, that the passer, once the passer realizes what his legs can do for him, it makes the defense respect his willingness to run. They play off. You can either short pass or go over the top of them. And the same thing can happen with Lamar Jackson. I'm using him as the runner. He ran first, and all of a sudden he's like, they're all chasing me. That means I got guys wide open. And all of a sudden he decides that he's going to become a better passer.
Well, I can promise you there's nothing more frustrating for listen, I'm watching it as a media guy.
Right.
When Russell Wilson took off on that run on 3rd and 5, there's nothing that frustrates you more than getting everybody covered up and have the quarterback run. And I think that's got to be part of his arsenal. He's just got to use common sense. Get out when you have to get out.
Exactly.
That's all.
And heck, Danny Jones gave us a lesson on that one a couple of Sundays ago.
And some of those were call runs, but some of them were just take it off, but get on the ground. That's
Justin Fields is an example. A lot of called runs in Chicago. It's not going to last long. It's not going to be the thing that they do forever, but they've got to figure out how to work with that patchwork line, and they had to just turn him loose. And he may not be seeing the field as much as they want him to. All right, what do you see when you see the Raiders?
Well, unfortunately, they've been successful, so their confidence level is probably not as affected as much as ours is, because we haven't been effective for a number of years. They've been effective. A year ago, they were in the playoffs. So you've got to look at it from the standpoint that they're going to come in here. They've scored a lot of points, Joe.
Yeah.
When you look at the team, even the games they've lost, they've scored 29, 24. And those are that's the concern, because they go get shut out this past week. What did the Colts do the next week after they got shut out?
Yeah,
they beat Kansas City.
Still can't believe they beat Kansas City.
Yeah, exactly. So to me, they're going to come in here fired up, and they've got some firepower. Devontae Adams and Renfro. Renfro and Jacobson as a running back. Yeah. They got Waller as a tight end. I mean, they've got some firepower on offense. Defensively, I don't think they're as strong. And again, I haven't really studied them yet, but I don't think they're as strong defensively as they are offensively.
Well, they got blanked 24-0 by the New Orleans Saints, and they've been an odd team to figure out. 0-2 to start the season. Then, as you said, coming back strong, scoring some points. See where they go.
Now, I will say, if I've hesitated to say this, and I've heard it said many times over the last 3-4 weeks by all of us. I haven't said it.
Right.
If we're going to do anything this year about building some confidence, this one is a must win. We have to win this game, because if it goes to 2-7, in my opinion, then you're talking about next year for sure.
Yeah, which is terrible. It's a terrible way to feel going, just barely getting past Halloween, going into November. Our long-running joke was we're not going to talk draft until after Halloween, and then here we are. Yeah, and the other part of it is that if you just get to a point, I might as well pick them to beat the Raiders, because it's a team I don't think they can beat, but the last 4 teams were teams I thought they could beat.
Yeah.
I mean, give me a break.
Yes.
Give me a break. All right, Chief wants to chime in before we wrap up our show.
I would,
after
because
all, he's controlling everything.
Yeah, well,
here,
of course, he's the man.
I would, because I heard 2 words that have resonated with me deeply ever since I've become a football fan, and those 2 words are draft and talk. So here's the thing, guys.
You don't want them right now.
Here's the thing. When it comes to draft season, there's a certain guy with a double last name that goes to the Ohio State University right now. His name might be Jackson Smith and Jigba. If you got Calvin Ridley, Jackson Smith and Jigba, Christian Kirk, and Zay Jones, that might be the best receiving corps in the NFL.
Well, is MH Jr. coming out too? Is he available?
He's a sophomore.
Okay, I was just going to say
Marvin Harrison Jr.
I would.
He might be better than Jackson Smith and Jigba.
Exactly.
I think he is.
He's ridiculous.
He's so good. And heck, Ohio State has kicked him out for a while now. But I'm with you.
We're less than a month from draft talk. Let's just be honest.
It's true. It's true. I just hate it. I hate it.
Sometimes things can snowball, though. If you get one win, maybe
That's
you get
true.
2, 3, 4.
And
That's
Coach,
true.
why not go ahead and pick them now? Because we thought they were going to win the last 4, and now maybe they'll win.
This is the one they have to win, though, in my opinion.
All right, listen, this guy knows. He knows how important it is, and we know how important it is to always give you something to think about on the Campo and Joe podcast. So a quick thanks to Beaver Chevrolet. Look for them online at beaverchevrolet.com. On Phillips Highway, you can drop on by. Brett Morgan and the boys, the ladies, they will all take great care of you. And we wowed you with our thoughts, and we say thanks to them because they're always wowing you at Beaver Chevrolet. Coach Campo, great job. Always enjoy it. Joe C., Campo and Joe. We'll talk to you next week.